Recognition, power, and influence is your birthright, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 252. In today's episode, I'm breaking down the reason that you might be receiving the feedback that you're talking about your promotion a little too often, and that instead you should focus on doing your job. And if this rubs you the wrong way, it should. It should. But oftentimes it's hard to know what to do instead. So I'm going to show you what to do instead in today's episode. All right, let's get started.
Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms.
Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. I am really pleased to announce, you know how much I love award ceremonies that celebrate women, and I am thrilled to announce that I and this podcast was celebrated last week in the Women in Podcasting Awards in the category of Best Career Podcast. Yay! I am absolutely thrilled to accept that award, and also I want to thank the people who make this podcast possible, besides myself, of course. Jennifer from Bourbon Barrel Podcasting, she's the woman behind the scenes that makes everything sound beautiful. And Marie Hannafin, who is my marketing producer and jack of all trades and really helps me produce the content that is available on this podcast every single week. And also my clients. Everything that I learn, everything I teach, everything that I do is because of one, their strength, their courage to have that and go for that seat at the table, but also their willingness to collaborate with me and really trust me as a guide for their careers. And then, of course, all of my listeners. It's really telling that this happened right at the 250th episode because it reminds me that we're in a marathon, not a sprint. And it is so important to remind yourself of that while your next promotion could literally happen in the next month or 2 weeks, that your seat at the table, your voice, your executive communication journey, your ability to hold space at the leadership table is always evolving and always shifting and always changing. This is why the women who I work with, some of them have been working with me for 3, 4, even 5 years, because they know that what it takes to be successful at the leadership table doesn't happen in isolation. I'm so grateful for you, the listeners, for all of my clients, for everybody on my team, and I'm really excited to bring you another 250 episodes. If you have loved this podcast as much as the Women in Podcasting Awards has, I recommend that you share it. You can share this episode. You can share your favorite episode. You can just talk about the podcast in general, but go on LinkedIn and talk about what you have been doing as a woman in leadership. It's really important to share our learnings, to share our leadership journey with other people. And guess what? It comes back to you. When you show up and when you say, hey, I'm putting in the work, you just might have somebody who's listening who wants to start recognizing you. So I recommend not only doing that for me and for the support of this podcast, but do it for yourself because you have been listening to these episodes. I know you have. You've been doing the work, and it's time to honor that. So tag me on it so that I can, again, say thank you, celebrate you as well. But more importantly, share all of the wisdom inside of this podcast. All right, now on to today's episode. I spoke a week or so ago about the 4-letter word ally and how sometimes it can seem like when we tell people directly, like let's say you're going to tell your boss that you're trying to build allies across the organization, that they can look at you sideways and sort of be like, hold off on that for now. But then when you actually look at what they're doing or what executive leaders are doing, they're constantly building allies all across the organization. So there is a difference between what we say to somebody else and what we're actually doing as leaders. The same applies to you. So you could say, oh, that's unfair. They're being disingenuous. Well, in one sense, they don't even know that they're being disingenuous because their job as your boss is to make you better at your job, not to help you find allies. Like, that's on you. Go get a coach, listen to this podcast, figure out how to do it. They're not required to help you build allies. But what they are required to do is to help you do a good job. And sometimes by doing a good job means that you're not going around telling everybody that you're building allies. So that doesn't help your technical aptitude anymore. It doesn't help make you building allies isn't always. There are aspects that help make you a better leader, but they see it as something that's selfish and just about personal motivation. So in today's episode, I'm actually going to talk about something else that comes up quite a bit in terms of professional development, and a word that I often see executive leaders kind of give you the side eye or turn sideways or cringe a little bit. And then I also want to give you some tools to continue still to do that work. So just because somebody gives us the side eye doesn't mean that we stop doing it. That's a big lesson in life. And also as a female leader, is just because somebody gives you the side eye doesn't mean that you actually stop doing it. I think I should put that on a t-shirt. All right. So what am I talking about? I was having a conversation with an executive leader about one of my clients, and she was telling me that my client is often talking about getting promoted. That's something that my client will bring up to her in conversation, that she has a desire to be promoted. And the executive leader was saying that she also wants to make sure that she's focused on doing a good job in her role. So talk less about getting promoted and talk more about being successful in your role. This is something that a lot of executive leaders would say. If you've ever been somebody who actually asked for a promotion and they were like, sit tight, focus on your job first, and then we'll talk about a promotion. That's pretty common. This is really, really common advice to tell us to sit tight, to wait, to see what happens. And not only, let's say that you keep bringing it up. Then you're saying, no, but I really do want a promotion. And then a month later you say, no, but I really do want a promotion. And they're like, wow, this person, all they care about is getting promoted. And I know that that is actually not true. I know that not all you care about is getting promoted because, and here's how I actually know that's true. Because if it really was true that all you cared about was getting promoted, you would get promoted. Right? Like, there is a way that you can wiggle your way to the top if that's truly all that you care about. If all you care about is schmoozing, meeting the right people, making sure you get your voice heard first, and you're just like pushing, at some point you're going to get promoted. But I know so many of you care about having a holistic view of your leadership journey. You want to really make that impact. You want to be great at your job. That is actually what you care about, first and foremost. And so I want to first acknowledge what happens for us as women when we receive this feedback, or really any feedback. So unfortunately, our approach to feedback is to take it at face value. So if somebody else tells us that we're doing something wrong, we believe them. Like, oh, I shouldn't do that. Such and such told me I shouldn't do that. Or such and such told me I should do that. And especially if that person is your boss, then you're going to feel even more likely to do exactly what they say. So if they tell you not to focus anymore on getting promoted, then you are going to focus less on getting promoted and more on doing your job well. And I think that the really big problem and the kind of, this is a subtle microaggression or toxic thing to say to a female leader in particular, to not focus on getting promoted, because they're going to do exactly that. And I want to encourage everybody in a position of power and influence. I actually had a friend of mine at school, one of the moms at school, tell me something that was just one of the biggest compliments that I had about my book. Is she said, I have this woman on my team who has been trying to get promoted and I don't know how to help her. So first of all, she didn't tell her, hey, just focus on doing a good job and you'll be promoted. She was willing to actually say, I don't know how to help her. But then your book came out and I finally saw how to help her. I gave her your book. So as an executive leader, if you have somebody who is coming to you regularly saying, hey, I want to be promoted, check yourself. Please don't perpetuate this idea that we should focus on our job and doing our job well, and then we will be rewarded, because that's not true. That is not how it works. We've been doing that for centuries, and it doesn't work. You have to focus on and think about your career trajectory, how to get promoted. What are the skills that you're going to need at that next level of leadership? What does it mean to be promoted? How do you build relationships that support that promotion and also your ability to be successful in the next level role? You have to be thinking ahead. This is like non-negotiable. So do not listen to this advice, first of all, if you've been given this advice. And then second of all, if you're a leader that is giving this advice, please stop. Give them my book instead if you don't know what else to do, but just stop. Stop telling women that they just need to focus on their job and doing a good job. All right, now, then the question comes up of like, well, what do we do? And like I said, you don't want to go up to them every single month and say, but I really want to be promoted. And I think that that's what a lot of women think the opposite is like, okay, well, I'm not going to listen to them. And so now I just have to shake them harder and really make sure they know that I really want to be promoted. So I'm just going to keep bringing it up. But they told you to stop focusing on getting promoted and to start focusing on your job. Now, the words that came out of their mouth was to stop focusing. That's typically what they'll say. But I want you to reinterpret that. I want you to hear that a little bit differently. Hear it how I hear it. Which is, instead of saying stop focusing, what they're actually saying to you is stop speaking to me about getting promoted and start speaking to me about the work that you're doing. Translate it for yourself. Go like in your brain, Google Translate. What would Stacy say? Stop focusing on getting promoted translates into stop talking to me about getting promoted. Start focusing on your work translates into start talking to me about your work. So that second piece, what does that imply? It means you're actually not talking to them enough about your work. And I guarantee this is true because everybody does this. And you've heard me talk about the concept that I have about showing your work, which is that we go into these check-ins with our boss every single week, and then we just give them a rundown of the work that we're doing, like a task list. And we just sort of say, hey, here's all the things I've been working on this week. And they're like, okay. But what they're not hearing is how you're developing and growing as a leader, how you manage through difficult, challenging situations with your team, some of the things that you're thinking about for your group going forward, maybe something interesting you heard about the industry. This is all the showing your work, how you think about how you solve bigger problems. So when they say, start talking to me, so that's the translation, start talking to me more about your work, that's what they mean. Start talking to me more about your process, how you're growing as a leader, and stop talking to me about getting promoted. So a promotion is a reward. It is technically a reward. If it's not a reward for your hard work, it's a reward for your ability to make it to that next level. And when you start showing your work, then you're showing them that you're ready for that next level. So I would agree with them. Stop talking to them about getting promoted. You can do it once. I totally recommend. Like some of my clients, I'm like, have you asked to get promoted? I'm like, no. Like at some point we got to ask, right? Like we have to ask, or we ask, what does it take to get promoted? But then you got to let that go. And you do need to start talking about your work. And that is so important. So the leader that gives somebody my book, that's the work that I'm talking about in Promotions Made Easy. I'm talking about how to show your work. And when you start to show your work, then you show them that you're ready to be promoted. Now, all you have to do is have these singular conversations, every 6 months to say, hey, I want to be promoted. And then you walk the talk and start showing your work and you will get promoted. That's actually how it works. But it's important to remember that when we receive feedback, that it's not always literal. And so when they say, stop focusing on, what they're really saying is stop talking to me about. This is just really important takeaway. That's why I keep repeating it, because I want to make sure that all of you know that the work that we do, the work that we're doing behind the scenes is to get promoted. Of course, people don't hire me so they can stay exactly where they are. They don't want to work with me every single week so that they can just be exactly the same and do their job that they already know how to do. They're working with me so that they can get recognized, so that they can have a voice, so that they can get more compensation, so that they can have a higher title, so that they can continue to move closer to their long-term career vision. Whatever that might be, it's all about career growth, about getting promoted. But what we're saying and what we're actually doing can be quite different. Same thing with the allyship. We can go out and build allies, and we can know in our head that we're building that ally, that the only reason I scheduled that meeting is because I want to actually, build a relationship, and I would love for that person to advocate for me. I would love for that person to endorse me, but we don't always have to say it specifically. And sometimes, again, I recommend saying it once or twice, but finding those right moments is the tricky part, making sure that the person who is listening to us is responding accordingly. When you start to do this, you start to become the manager of your own career. You're pointing yourself in the right direction. You're making very deliberate choices. You're using two parts of your brain. You're using that long-term strategic, why am I doing this? And then the shorter term, ground level, what are the actual actions that I'm taking? As you continue to rise into higher levels of executive leadership, this gets magnified. The skill gets magnified. And so being able to do this at whatever level that you're at right now is going to have a huge, huge impact on who is able to receive it. So this is my recommendation for this week. I want you to kind of catch yourself. Are there times when you could show your work a little bit more, whether your boss has told you to do this or not? Start to do that process, see how it works out. And then if you're somebody who is simply focusing on, I would like to be promoted, and you feel like you've said it 2 or 3 times and you're not getting anywhere, instead go and start to share and show your work and start talking to them more about their work. And then in a couple of months, bring it up again. I would still like to be promoted in March. All right, my friends, let me know how it goes, and I'll see you again next week. Bye. Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions, and decided where you fall in each category, and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be, or how far away you might be, and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time, so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today.